Today, I want to share a story so heartbreaking it will leave you silent by the end. A frontier tale wrapped in dust, gun smoke, and the cruel beauty of the Old West. This was a land where love was buried alongside the dead, and survival demanded impossible choices. It began with a single gunshot, one bullet in the back of an honest man, and a promise from a widow who refused to let his dream die with him. Before we kick off this adventure, don't forget to hit like on the video and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. That's your protection now, widow. An old dust-burned relic who can barely stay in the saddle. Bram Ashford's laughter split the graveyard silence like a bullwhip. His brothers, Holt and Evan, joined in, their voices rolling across the headstones as they sat easy on their horses at the edge of the burial ground. The Redemption Flat settlers had already scattered. Women clutching children, men ducking behind markers, boots scraping dirt in panic. Elder Whit Ames dropped his Bible in the dust as he fled. Maeve Holloway stood unmoving beside her husband's fresh grave, the black dress clinging to her skin under the brutal Texas sun. The old man at her side, tall, silver-haired, wrapped in a trail-worn duster, slowly raised his head. His eyes were pale blue, cold as winter sky, and they locked onto Bram with a stillness that made seasoned men uneasy. "Ma'am," the old man said quietly, "step behind me." Bram leaned forward in his saddle, grinning. "Hear that, boys? Looks like the geese brought themselves a guard dog." He spat a stream of tobacco into the dirt. "Old man, you've got 10 seconds to crawl back onto whatever you rode in on and clear out. This is Ashford business." Maeve clutched the man's arm. "Rourke, there's 3 of them. They killed Jonah." Rourke Holloway, her late husband's father, had arrived that morning just as the funeral began. He never took his eyes off the Ashfords. "I can count," he said calmly, "and I know what they did." Holt Ashford's smile faltered. Something about the old man's posture stirred recognition. Holt's gaze dropped to the twin revolvers riding low on Rourke's hips. Old cavalry coats, worn but immaculate. Bone grips carved with initials. "Wait," Holt said slowly. "Bram, look at those guns." Bram's hand drifted toward his holster. "I don't care if he's carrying Lincoln's own pistols. He's just an old fool." Rourke's right hand moved, not fast by a young man's measure, but with the clean certainty of decades. Leather cleared, steel came up, hammer cocked, aim settled, all in one smooth breath. The barrel pointed straight at Bram's chest. "Jesus Christ," Holt breathed. The initials were clear now. R.H., 5th Cavalry. "Bram," Holt said hoarsely, "that's Rourke Holloway." The grin drained from Bram's face. "What?" "5th Cavalry Scout," Holt continued. "Apache campaigns. They called him the Twin Devil." Rourke's voice stayed low. "I'm the man whose son you murdered. You get one chance to ride out and never come back, or I'll bury all 3 of you right where you sit." He paused. Then his eyes hardened. "Now don't move. This is where things change." Maeve's heart slammed against her ribs. She had met Rourke only 4 hours earlier, when his horse appeared at the edge of the cemetery as the service began. Jonah had barely spoken of his father in 5 years of marriage. Only once, late at night, calling him a hard man who'd left when Jonah was 16. "A killer," Jonah had said. Bram's face flushed. "You can't take all 3 of us, old man. Even if you're fast, and I doubt it, you won't drop us before one gets you. That's just numbers." "Maybe," Rourke agreed. "But I'll kill you first, Bram. That I promise. Your brothers might get me after, but you'll be dead before you hit the ground." His thumb rested on the hammer. "So what's it going to be?" The standoff stretched, 5 seconds. 10. Holt made the call. He yanked his reins back. This ain't worth dying over, not today. You coward, Bram snarled, sweat streaking his temples. Evan was already backing away. Holt's right. Let's go. Bram's face twisted with rage. This isn't over. We'll burn that ranch to the dirt. We'll kill you both. Rourke tracked him with the gun, then fired. Not at Bram, at the ground in front of his horse. The animal screamed and reared. When Bram regained control, both of Rourke's revolvers were drawn. Next shot goes through flesh, Rourke said. Now ride. They rode, Bram last, hurling threats that scattered into the wind. The settlers crept back, whispering. Maeve dropped to her knees beside Jonah's grave. Rourke holstered his guns and knelt with her. Tears cut clean lines through the dust on his weathered face. I'm sorry, he said softly. Sorry I wasn't there. Sorry I left. Sorry it took his death to bring me home. Maeve looked at the stranger, who was now family, the legend who had saved her life. They'll come back. Rourke nodded. I know. He stood, eyes fixed on the horizon. And when they do, I'll be ready. That's a promise. 3 hours later, Maeve Holloway sat across the table from Rourke Holloway in her narrow kitchen, studying him in the low afternoon light. The twin revolvers rested between them, iron and history laid bare. Rourke had shed his coat, exposing a lean frame carved by scars. His hands told the story, one finger gone, old burn marks, pale seams where blades had cut deep. Jonah never said much about you, Maeve said quietly. Only that you left when he was 16. She paused. That you rode as a cavalry scout, and that you were the most dangerous man he ever knew. Rourke stared into his coffee. I was a killer, Union cavalry first, then scouting, then bounty work. I had a talent for it. Too much of one. Jonah saw what it did to me, Rourke went on. Saw the blood I carried home. I left because I loved him, thought he'd stand a better chance without me. He was a good man, Maeve said, firm as bedrock. Built this ranch from nothing, treated folks fair, and the Ashfords murdered him for it. Shot him in the back because he wouldn't sell. Rourke's grip tightened around the cup. He wrote to me every year. About the land, about you. I never wrote back, he said after a moment. Figured silence was kinder. His jaw worked. Now he's dead. And I wasn't here to stop it. I failed him. I never taught him how cruel this country can be. Never taught him that sometimes you have to kill first or be buried. Maeve rose and crossed to the window, looking out over the land Jonah had died defending. 200 acres, a year-round creek, cattle carrying the Holloway brand. I won't sell, she said, and I won't run. Rourke nodded. Didn't expect you to. Jonah wrote about you, said you were the strongest person he'd ever known. He stood, buckling on his gun belt. So we prepare, because when the Ashfords come back, they'll bring men. And if we want to live, we'll have to be ready to kill. He met her eyes. You ready for that? Maeve thought of Jonah's body, the holes in his back. Yes, she said, whatever it takes. Morning broke cold. Maeve dressed in riding clothes and fastened Jonah's gun belt around her waist. It felt like wearing a skin from a life already gone. Rourke was awake before dawn, checking horses in the barn. His rifle rested nearby. Even in sleep, he never strayed far from steel. Old habits. They rode into Redemption Flats after sunrise. The town was already stirring, but as they passed down Main Street, conversations died mid-sentence. Everyone knew what had happened at the cemetery. Everyone was waiting to see what followed. At Noah Pritchard's general store, the shopkeeper looked pale. "Mrs. Holloway? Mr. Holloway, what can I do for you?" "Ammunition," Rourke said. ".45 caliber, 6 boxes, also beans, coffee, salt, pork, flour, medical supplies, bandages, carbolic acid, laudanum." Noah's hands shook. "Mr. Holloway, I don't want trouble. The Ashfords are good customers. I can't afford to cross them." "You're getting paid," Rourke replied evenly. "This is business." "They'll hear about it," Noah said. "They'll think I'm choosing sides." Maeve stepped forward. "My husband bought from you for 5 years, paid fair, treated you with respect. The Ashfords murdered him," she continued. "If sides worried you, you should have thought of that while Jonah was alive." Noah flushed. "I've got a family, a wife, 3 kids." "They won't punish everyone," Rourke said. "Business with us won't ruin you. They're not that foolish." He laid bills on the counter. "Now, are you selling?" Noah hesitated, then began wrapping supplies. "I'll sell," he said softly. "Just don't bring the storm to my door." They were loading the wagon when Cyrus Halden appeared. Gray mustache, lined face, 60 years worn thin by fear and compromise. "Mrs. Holloway, Mr. Holloway, need a word." Outside, Halden lowered his voice. "The Ashfords are filing a complaint. Claim you threatened lethal force without cause. They want arrests." Maeve felt heat surge in her chest. "They killed Jonah." "I'm not arresting anyone," Halden said. "Not yet. But you need to understand, Ashfords own half this county. They've got lawyers, judges, politicians. If they push, my hands are tied." "So you'll do what they tell you," Rourke said flatly. Halden nodded. "Because I'm scared. I've got 2 deputies, both green. The Ashfords have 20 hired guns. If this turns into a war, good people die. I'm trying to stop that." "By telling us to run," Maeve said bitterly. "By asking you to be smart," Halden replied. "I knew Jonah. He was honest. What happened was murder, but I can't prove it. They'll claim self-defense. Their men will swear Jonah drew first." Halden's eyes dropped. "Belief and proof aren't the same thing out here." "He was unarmed," Maeve Holloway said tightly. "His rifle was still in the scabbard when I found him. I can't prove that either." Cyrus Halden exhaled slowly. "Belief and proof aren't the same thing. The circuit judge rides in next month. I could file charges, but they'd be tossed out. After that, the Ashfords would be untouchable." Rourke Holloway had been listening without interruption. "So what you're saying, Marshal, is that there is no law. Not for folks like us. The Ashfords are the law, because they've got money and guns." Halden's face sagged. "I'm one man. Not a hero, not a gunfighter. Just someone trying to keep a town from burning. If you go to war," he continued, "this town burns. So yes, I'm asking you to sell and leave. Not because it's right, because I want you alive. That's all. Because if you stay, you'll die. Both of you." They mounted and rode out under 100 watching eyes. Behind them, Halden stood alone in the street, suddenly looking older than his years. And north of town, at the Ashford Ranch, plans were already taking shape. "There is no law," Maeve said quietly as they rode. "Only power," Rourke replied, "and the will to use it." Maeve's jaw tightened. "Then we use it, whatever it takes." That afternoon, 2 riders appeared on the ridge. Rourke saw them first, his hand drifting toward his gun. But Maeve raised Jonah's spyglass and shook her head. "Not Ashfords. One's a woman. The riders halted 50 yards out. The woman sat her horse astride, dressed in men's clothes, posture steady and unafraid. "Mrs. Holloway," she called. "My name is Irene Calder. Can we talk?" "Who are you?" Maeve answered. "Friends, we hope," the woman said. "Or at least allies." Rourke gave a slight nod. Maeve raised her voice. "Come ahead, slow." They rode closer. Irene dismounted first. She had sharp eyes and hands hardened by work. The man with her stayed mounted, solid, watchful. "Irene Calder," she said again. "This is Thorne Maddox, my ranch foreman." She studied the land with a practiced eye. "Your husband built a fine place. Jonah was a good neighbor. I'm sorry for your loss." "Why are you here?" Maeve asked. Irene didn't waste words. "Because the Ashfords are poison. I'm done watching them ruin anything decent. They killed Jonah because he wouldn't sell. They've been pressing me for 2 years. When I refused, they poisoned my water. Killed 50 head of cattle. The law did nothing." "What do you want from us?" Rourke asked. "Nothing," Irene said. "I'm offering help. I've got 10 men. Good men. If the Ashfords come for you, I'm next. Better we stand together." Maeve felt something stir. Small, dangerous hope. "You'd fight with us?" "I'd fight anyone who stands up to them," Irene said. "I'm tired of being scared." "If you're making a stand," she added, "I want in." Thorne Maddox spoke then, his voice rough with memory. "Ma'am, I was stationed at Fort Apache." He looked at Rourke. "Heard stories about a scout called Rourke Holloway. Twin Colts, that you?" Rourke met his gaze. "I was. A long time ago." Thorne nodded. "Then maybe we've got a chance." "Because the Ashfords hired 4 new men yesterday," he continued. "Brought them in from Kansas. I know one of them. A gunman named Slate Mercer." "He's a killer," Thorne said. "Fast, expensive. Men like that don't get hired unless serious blood is coming." The hope dimmed. 4 more guns, 24 total. Against the 4 of us? Irene shook her head. "Bad odds, but not impossible." "If we're smart," Rourke said. "If you're serious, Mrs. Calder, we need to talk strategy. But understand this, people will die." "Maybe us," he added. "Once it starts, there's no turning back. You willing to pay that price?" Irene's face hardened. "My husband died 5 years ago. Left me a ranch and neighbors who said a woman couldn't hold it. I've spent 5 years proving them wrong. I won't lose it to the Ashfords. So yes," she said, "I'll pay any price." They gathered around the kitchen table. Rourke spread out a hand-drawn map, marking ranch lines, roads, and towns. Irene pointed out Ashford patrol routes. Night guards here and here. Thorne added military insight. Fields of fire, choke points, supply lines. A plan began to take shape. "The Ashfords won't come straight at us," Rourke said. "They'll cut us off first. Supplies, buildings, cattle. Make us weak," Irene said. "Then hit us hard. So we don't wait," she added. "We strike first. Disrupt them before they can close the noose." The room fell quiet. And then the war truly began. "Guerrilla tactics," Thorne Maddox added. "Hit and fade. Burn their hay, cut loose their horses, drop the telegraph lines. Force them to bleed time and men just guarding what they own." Maeve Holloway listened in silence, her thoughts racing ahead of the words. "But we can't raid forever," she said at last. "Sooner or later they'll corner us, and when it turns into a straight fight, we lose." "Not if we choose the ground," Rourke Holloway said. He tapped the map with one finger. Devil's Canyon, narrow throat, high walls. My walls, one way in. 10 rifles can hold 50 men there. Maeve looked up. How do we draw them in? With bait. Rourke's eyes settled on her. They want you dead almost as much as they want this land. If they think you're running, alone and scared, they'll come fast, all of them, and we'll be waiting. Maeve's stomach tightened. You want me to be the bait, alone? Not alone, Rourke said. We'll be close, hidden. But they have to believe you are, Irene Calder argued. If they smell a trap, it's too dangerous, she finished. If they catch me, Maeve said evenly, then I die fighting. She met Irene's eyes. Better than waiting for them to burn us out. Rourke studied her for a long moment. You're sure? I'm sure. He nodded once. Then we do it tomorrow. We let word slip that you're fleeing to El Paso. Make it obvious. They'll follow. And we'll be ready. They spent the rest of the day preparing, cleaning weapons, counting rounds, scouting Devil's Canyon. Rourke and Thorne placed men high along the canyon walls, rifles hidden in shadow. Irene took 3 men to seal the mouth of the pass. By sunset, the trap was set. That night, Maeve didn't sleep. In a few hours, she would ride out alone, wearing fear like a mask, playing the part of a widow running for her life. And monsters would follow. She should have been afraid. Instead, she felt cold, focused. A knock sounded at the door. Maeve, Rourke's voice. You awake? She opened it. He looked worse than before. Pale, sweating, old wounds seeping through the bandages. I just wanted to see you were all right. I'm fine, she said. Then, after a pause, Rourke, if something goes wrong, if they catch me, don't come after me. Finish the trap, she said quietly. Promise me. He shook his head. I can't. You have to, Maeve said. Promise you'll finish it. His jaw tightened. For a long moment he said nothing. Finally he nodded. I promise. Then softer, but you'll make it. We'll win this. Together. Dawn rose blood red. Maeve mounted in the pre-dawn dark, dressed for travel, carrying only a bedroll and a canteen. She looked exactly like what she was meant to be. A woman fleeing with nothing left to lose. Desperate. Alone. Perfect. Rourke watched from the shadows. Irene stepped forward and squeezed Maeve's hand once. Then Maeve rode west, straight toward Devil's Canyon. She pushed her horse hard, but not too hard. Fast enough to look panicked, slow enough to be caught. The land rolled past, beautiful and cruel. Jonah had loved it, died for it. Now she might die for it too. 2 hours later, she saw the dust behind her. Riders, many of them. Her heart slammed. This was real now. She urged her horse forward, letting fear show. Behind her, the Ashford riders closed the distance, shouting, laughing, confident fools. Devil's Canyon split the earth ahead, a dark wound in red stone. Maeve drove straight for it. Shouts grew louder. A rifle cracked. The shot went wide. Another followed. Closer. They were trying to drop her horse. She reached the canyon mouth and plunged inside. The walls rose steep and close, red stone clawing the sky. The trail narrowed. Behind her, the riders poured in. She could hear them, 15 at least, maybe more. All committed, all inside the killing box. Perfect. Maeve rode deeper. 100 yards, 200. Then she saw it. A brief flash of mirror from the canyon rim. Rourke's signal. The trap was set. Maeve kicked her horse hard and drove for the far end, toward safety. And behind her, Hell was about to open, and behind her, hell broke loose. Rourke Holloway gave the signal. Rifles thundered from the canyon walls. The first volley was merciless. The lead Ashford riders went down instantly, horses shrieking, men torn from their saddles. The rest tried to wheel back, but Irene Calder's men had already sealed the entrance. They were trapped. Caught in a brutal crossfire with nowhere to flee, it became slaughter. Not a fight, but a killing ground. Men and horses collapsed in the narrow pass, unable to turn, unable to find cover. Some tried to dismount. Bullets cut them down. Others charged forward and died doing it. A few raised their hands to surrender. The rifles never stopped. Maeve Holloway reached the far end of the canyon, swung down from her horse, and grabbed her rifle. She climbed to higher ground, took aim, and squeezed the trigger. A man fell. Then another. She kept firing, steady, controlled, emptied of feeling. These were the men who had murdered Jonah Holloway. She felt no mercy. The fight was over in 5 minutes. When the smoke thinned, 23 bodies lay scattered across the blood-soaked stone, and Maeve stood on the rim, rifle empty, staring down at what remained. Rourke came up beside her, his face ashen with pain. Holt Ashford and Evan Ashford were not among the dead. They had sent their men, but stayed behind. "We need to finish this," Rourke said. "No," Maeve answered. "We need to end it. Now." She climbed down and walked among the bodies. Found Bram Ashford near the canyon mouth, his corpse riddled with lead. Found the Kansas gunmen, including Slate Mercer. All dead. It was over. Maeve drew a slow breath. "Bring the horses." "We're riding to the Ashford Ranch," she said. "Right now, and we're giving Holt and Evan an offer they can't refuse." They rode into the Ashford Ranch at noon. 14 exhausted fighters, pack horses dragging the dead behind them. Maeve rode at the front, her rifle resting across the saddle. The ranch was eerily silent. Most of the hands were dead in Devil's Canyon. Only a few remained: old men, cooks, stable boys. Holt Ashford and Evan Ashford stepped out of the main house. Holt went pale when he saw the bodies. Evan looked like he might be sick. "What have you done?" Holt whispered. "What you forced me to do?" Maeve said coldly. "Your men are dead. Your brother is dead. Your hired guns are dead. It's over, Holt. You lost." "You murdered them," Evan shouted. "No," Rourke said evenly. "We killed them in battle. They came after Mrs. Holloway with guns drawn. We defended ourselves. That's law. That's justice. If you want to argue it, we can ride to Cyrus Halden right now." Holt's hand drifted toward his gun. Irene lifted her rifle. "Don't," Holt said quickly. "Please. I'm tired of killing." "We all are," Maeve said. "So let it end." Holt's hand fell away, his face twisted, grief, rage, defeat bleeding together. "What do you want?" "I want you gone," Maeve said. "Sell this ranch. Take your brother. Take your money. Leave this county. Today. And never come back." "And if we don't?" Evan asked, his voice small. Maeve stared at him, her eyes cold as January ice. "Then we'll kill you too. And burn this place to the ground. And make sure no one remembers the Ashford name except as a warning." Silence stretched between them. Holt and Evan looked at each other. All the pride, the cruelty, the arrogance, gone, burned out by defeat. They were broken men now. "How long?" Holt asked quietly. "Until sundown," Rourke said. "After that, I can't promise your safety. Too many families you've ruined. I'm done. Leave now. You might live." Holt nodded. "We'll go," he said. "I'll sign the ranch over to the town. But I want your word." Your word, Rourke Holloway, that you won't hunt us. Rourke considered, then nodded once. You have my word, as long as you leave and never return. They watched Holt and Evan pack, watched the wagons load, watched them ride east, toward Arkansas, or wherever broken men disappear. The remaining hands scattered. By sundown, the Ashford ranch stood empty, a shadow of what it once was. Maeve Holloway sat her horse and watched the last wagon fade into the distance. What she felt wasn't triumph. It was hollow, empty. The revenge carried no sweetness, no relief. It was simply finished. Jonah Holloway was still dead. The land was still darkened by blood. And she had become something she never meant to be. A killer. Rourke Holloway rode beside her. Are you all right? No, Maeve answered honestly, but I will be. Someday, maybe. Rourke nodded. Jonah would be proud. You stood for what he built. That takes courage, he added softly. Or madness. I'm not sure which. They rode back to the Holloway ranch in silence. The land looked unchanged. The creek still ran clear. The sky still opened wide. Nothing had changed. Everything had. Maeve dismounted and stood before the house Jonah had built with his own hands. Thank you, she said to Rourke. For coming. For fighting. For keeping your word. Rourke swallowed. I should be thanking you. For giving me the chance to make things right. To be the father I should have been. It doesn't erase the past, he said. But it's something. They buried the dead in a new cemetery on the edge of town. No names. No markers. Only stacked stones. Quiet proof that violence had passed through and moved on. The Redemption Flat settlers called a meeting. They voted to divide the Ashford land among families. Water rights were set fair and shared. Ordinances were passed against land hoarding. Small steps toward the world Jonah had wanted. 6 months later, spring returned to Redemption Flats. The hills bloomed with wildflowers. Calves dropped into the fields. Life, stubborn and unyielding, pushed forward. Maeve stood on her porch at sunrise and felt something settle in her chest. Not happiness, not yet, but peace. The war was done. The threat was gone. Rourke joined her, moving slower now. His wounds had closed, but they had taken their toll. He looked older. I've been thinking about staying, he said. If you'll have me, help with the ranch. Be the grandfather Jonah's children should have had. Maeve smiled, the first real smile in months. I'd like that. Jonah would too. They stood together as the day broke. 2 survivors, 2 fighters, 2 people who had paid dearly. The frontier was still harsh, still dangerous, but maybe, just maybe, they had nudged it toward something better, something fairer, something closer to Jonah's dream. Irene Calder rode up then, her arm fully healed. Morning. I've got news. The land next to yours, the old Henderson place, it's for sale. I'm thinking of buying it, she said. We could share water rights. Help each other. Build something bigger than just ranches. Maeve felt it then. Hope. Fragile, but real. Jonah would have loved that, Maeve said. Then let's do it, Irene replied. Let's build what should have been built years ago. A place where good people can stand, where strength shields the weak. Rourke nodded slowly. It'll take time, more time than I've got left. But it's worth doing. They shook hands. 3 people against the wilderness, against chaos, not a fairy tale ending. The scars remained. The nights were still haunted. Maeve still woke to echoes of gunfire, still saw the faces of the men she had killed. But she also saw sunrise, felt the wind, watched the cattle move across open land. Life went on. Jonah lay buried on the hill above the ranch. Maeve visited his grave each evening, talking about the day, the choices, the future. Sometimes she swore she could feel him listening, approving. "My love," she whispered, "I did it. I protected what you built. I made them pay. I survived. And now I'll make this land everything you dreamed it could be. I swear it." The wind moved through the grass, warm and gentle. Maeve Holloway, widow and warrior, survivor and builder, turned from the grave and walked back toward the house. Back to the life she had fought for. Not to preserve the past, but to face the future waiting for her. Uncertain, yet possible. The war was finished. The killing was done. Now came the harder work, living, healing, becoming more than a woman with blood on her hands, becoming what Jonah Holloway had always believed she was. The strongest person he had ever known. The one who would carry his dream forward. She found Rourke Holloway in the barn, repairing a saddle. His hands moved with practiced ease, muscle memory shaped by decades on the frontier. "You know," he said without looking up, "Jonah wrote me once about his plans for this place. Said he wanted to build a school someday, bring in a teacher, give the children out here something better." Maeve looked at him. "He never told me that." Rourke nodded. Probably thought it sounded too ambitious. But he dreamed big. Wanted this to be more than a ranch. He wanted it to be the start of something, a real town, a real community. He looked up. Maybe we can still do that. In his name. Maeve pictured it. A schoolhouse, a church, more families, more ranches. A place where the law meant something, where men like the Ashfords could never rule through fear again. "It'll take years," she said. "Good things usually do," Rourke replied. "And money we don't have." "We'll find it," Maeve said. "Irene Calder has resources. You've got savings tucked away, and there are good people in this county who'll help, if they know we're serious." She felt the idea take shape, not replacing what she'd lost, but building something new on top of it. A living memorial. "All right," she said. "Let's do it. Let's build Jonah's dream." In the months that followed, they worked without pause. Irene bought the old Henderson place and merged operations with the Holloway Ranch. More hands were hired. Good men with families, men who wanted steady work and honest pay. Thorne Maddox became foreman of the combined operation, overseeing cattle drives and coordinating with neighboring ranches. The town grew. New businesses opened. A proper school was built. A teacher arrived from St. Louis, Lillian Frost, a young widow who had lost her husband to cholera and come west for a fresh start. She and Maeve became close, bound by shared loss and the will to build something lasting. Cyrus Halden retired soon after. The town elected a new marshal. Vance Kettering, a former Union cavalry officer who had known Rourke during the war. Kettering was fair, but unyielding. He enforced the law without regard for wealth or power. The days of rule by fear were finished. Maeve found herself becoming a leader. People sought her out, for counsel, for judgment, for help when times were hard. She never asked for the role. It came to her anyway. The widow who had stood her ground, the woman who refused to be broken. She became a symbol of courage, perhaps, or justice, or simply the stubborn will to endure. The nightmares never fully left. Some nights she woke with her heart racing, her hand reaching for the gun beside her bed. She still saw the faces of the men who died in Devil's Canyon. But there were good days, too. Days spent laughing with Irene over coffee. Days watching children play in the dirt streets. days when the weight of what she'd done felt bearable. Rourke's health faded slowly. Old wounds never truly healed. He moved slower now, tired more easily, yet he seemed at peace. "I'm 73, he told Maeve one evening. "I've lived longer than I had any right to. I've seen more, done more, survived more than most men ever will. And now I get to spend what's left helping build something good, helping finish what my son started. That's more than I deserve." "You deserve peace," Maeve said. "Maybe," he replied, "but purpose will do." A year after the battle, on a warm spring evening, Maeve stood on the hill beside Jonah's grave. Below her, the town spread out, lanterns beginning to glow as night settled in. Music drifted from the saloon. Laughter rolled down the street. The ordinary sounds of life went on. Irene Calder stepped up beside her, quiet for a moment. "You did it," she said at last. "You saved this place. You saved all of us. The Ashfords would have taken my ranch next, then someone else's. You stopped them. You changed everything." "We stopped them," Maeve Holloway said softly. "All of us." "But you led," Irene replied. "You made the hard calls. You paid the price." She hesitated. "Jonah would be proud." Tears slid down Maeve's cheeks. "I hope so. Wherever he is, I hope he knows what we built, and what we're still building." They stood together as the first stars came out, watching over land that had cost them everything and meant even more. Two women who had survived, who had fought, who had won, not cleanly, not without scars, but won all the same. 2 years after the battle at Devil's Canyon, Maeve sat on her porch watching the sun sink low. The ranch prospered. The town thrived. The school held 30 students now. A church stood on Main Street. New families arrived every week, drawn by word that Redemption Flats was a place to begin again. A safe place. A fair place. Rourke Holloway had passed 6 months earlier, quietly in his sleep. They buried him beside Jonah, father and son reunited at last. Half the county came to the funeral. Folks spoke of Rourke's courage, his sacrifice, his role in ending Ashford rule. But Maeve remembered him differently, as the old man who showed up when she needed him most, who fought beside her, who became the family she thought she'd lost forever. Irene's ranch and Maeve's had formally merged, creating the largest operation in 3 counties. 40 men worked the land. 5,000 head of cattle carried their brand. They became the backbone of Redemption Flats. But what mattered more than profit was what they proved: that people could stand together, share resources, build instead of destroy. Maeve never remarried. Some folks whispered about it, wondered why a young widow didn't seek another husband. But Maeve had no interest. Jonah had been her love. That chapter was closed. Now her work was different. Building, leading, shaping what came next. And that was enough. She often thought about the violence, about the men she had killed, about whether there had been another way. She would never know. But she knew this. Jonah's dream lived on. The ranch endured. Good people flourished. And the Ashfords were gone. Their reign of terror was finished. If it had taken blood, if it had taken her becoming something she never wanted to be, then so be it. She had paid the cost. And if she had to, she would pay it again. As night settled in, Maeve stepped inside. Tomorrow would bring new challenges: a water dispute, a cattle drive to plan, a town council meeting. The work never ended. But it was good work, the kind of work that carved civilization out of wilderness. She paused at Jonah's photograph on the mantel and touched the frame gently. "We did it, love," she whispered. We built everything you dreamed of. And I'll keep building it for as long as I draw breath. That's my promise, my last promise. Outside, the wind whispered through the grass. Stars burned bright in the vast Texas sky, and Maeve Holloway, once a frightened widow, now a pillar of her community, settled in for the night. Tomorrow would come with its demands. But tonight, she had peace. Hard won, blood paid, but real. The frontier was changing, growing kinder, growing just. And she had helped make it so. Whatever the cost, it had been worth it. Finally, let me send my deep thanks to you. Thank you for listening. If this story has touched your heart, I invite you to stay with us to discover more true tales of the Wild West. Stories that honor resilience, tenderness, and the spirit that God placed in those who blaze the trail. Subscribe, share. Leave your thoughts in the comments, and join us once again to journey across this untamed land. Thank you. Aviso legal. Disclaimer. These stories are crafted purely for entertainment and may contain imaginative additions or dramatic interpretations inspired by old frontier eras. We use AI-based resources, voice, imagery, and drafting as part of our creative process. But every final detail is carefully reviewed and shaped by human effort to preserve emotional depth and authenticity. We strictly follow YouTube's rules regarding AI-generated content and refrain from deep fakes, altered identities, or misleading representations. All images, sounds, and related materials are lawfully obtained. Please do not reuse, modify, or distribute any portion of this content without written permission. Thank you for valuing creativity, respect, and original work.